My rich best friend publicly humiliated me at prom, so I burned her entire life down. A year later, she showed up, begging me for a couch to sleep on. Growing up, I never had much. It wasn't something I liked to broadcast, but everyone kind of knew anyway. I wore clothes from thrift stores, had a cracked phone screen I couldn't afford to fix, and usually ate the free lunches provided by the school. It wasn't great, but it wasn't terrible either. I had friends, a good sense of humor, and a reputation for being chill and easygoing. Life was mid. Then, junior year rolled around and Jasmine transferred into our school. Jasmine had everything: glossy hair, designer bags, and an Instagram full of vacations I was scared to even dream of. When she sat next to me in English and instantly complimented my thrifted sweater, I felt something twist in my chest. I'd heard rich kids could be nice, but I didn't expect her to single me out. We quickly became friends, which felt surreal. She'd even treat me to overpriced smoothies after class. So when she invited me to prom in senior year, promising a night of glamour and memories, it felt like an opportunity I couldn't turn down. Except there was one catch. Jasmine told me I'd have to blend in with her rich friends, and that meant looking like I belonged. Just dress like you're loaded, she laughed one afternoon. She said it casually, tossing her hair over her shoulder, but something in her eyes told me she wasn't kidding. So I took on extra shifts at the diner, spending late nights bussing tables, serving coffee, and fighting off exhaustion. I pinched pennies until I had enough for a sparkling gown and accessories to match. By the time prom rolled around, I was exhausted, but I looked exactly the way Jasmine had described. Fast forward to the big night. Jasmine picked me up, and as soon as she saw me, she clapped her hands dramatically. "You almost look like one of us," she teased, her eyes glittering in a way that didn't feel friendly anymore. I shrugged it off, telling myself she was just nervous. At first, prom was exactly as Jasmine promised. Chandeliers dripped with golden lights, music pulsed around us, and everyone was friendly and complimentary. People I'd never talked to before suddenly seemed interested in me, and for a moment, I allowed myself to believe it was genuine, until everything started to unravel. When she thought I wasn't listening, she'd whisper things like, "That dress cost her whole paycheck." Another time I heard her murmur, "Honestly, it's cute how she tries so hard. Poor people, am I right?" It stung, like, a lot, and I kept hoping for it to stop, but it didn't. Each joke landed sharper than the last, and my patience wore thin. Finally, she stood up during dessert, her voice carrying over the crowded ballroom. "Let's toast to my friend, the best-dressed poor girl here," she declared loudly, raising her glass in exaggerated triumph. The laughter that followed cut me to the bone, and that's when something snapped. I stood up, my chair scraping loudly on the polished floor, meeting Jasmine's eyes head-on. "Yeah, Jasmine," I said evenly, my voice surprisingly clear. "I am poor. So what?" The room fell silent, eyes widening in shock. Jasmine's mouth dropped slightly, her confidence wavering for a split second. I leaned closer, feeling braver. "At least I don't cheat my way through calculus and bribe my tutor to write my papers. Or did you think everyone just believed you suddenly became a genius overnight?" Whispers erupted around us, shock spreading across faces that had moments before laughed at me. Jasmine's cheeks flushed scarlet, her perfect composure cracking. "You have no idea what you're talking about," she hissed, gripping her glass so tightly I thought it might shatter. "Oh, I do," I replied calmly. "Everyone knows. They just don't say anything because your parents own half the town." She instantly stormed off, and even tripped on her Steve Madden heels. The rest of the night passed in a blur. People approached me with whispered congratulations. But Jasmine wasn't done with me yet, because that small victory soon ruined my entire life. It started when the scholarship acceptance I'd been counting on suddenly fell through, with no explanation given. I tried to convince myself it was a coincidence, but a few weeks later, my entire college acceptance itself was revoked, citing discrepancies in my application I knew hadn't existed before. I couldn't sleep. I hated myself for not just giving in to Jasmine's bitchiness. I thought there was at least one silver lining. I literally had nothing else to lose. But apparently I was wrong about that too, because around this time was when I heard it. My parents were whispering late one night. They had both lost their jobs unexpectedly, laid off without notice or clear reason. And when I heard it, I just smiled, because I had an ace up my sleeve, one Jasmine would never see coming. I'd been planning this for weeks, actually. Ever since prom night, I started paying attention to things. Real close attention. See, when you're poor and invisible, rich people talk around you like you're furniture. They don't notice the girl refilling water glasses or wiping down tables. And Jasmine's dad loved to have business meetings at the country club restaurant where I worked weekends. I heard him bragging about his tax schemes one Saturday afternoon. He was explaining to somebody how he moved money through fake companies, gesturing with his hands like he was conducting an orchestra of fraud. I started writing everything down in my phone during bathroom breaks. Names, dates, amounts he mentioned. I even took photos of documents he left on tables when he went to the bathroom. The guy was sloppy, probably because he thought nobody like me would understand what I was looking at. But I understood enough. My cousin Tyler worked at the IRS, doing data entry stuff. Nothing fancy, but he knew people who knew people. I called him up one night and told him I had something interesting. He said to send it over, no questions asked. I created a fake email account at the library and sent everything. Every photo, every note, every detail I'd collected. Then I waited. It took about 6 weeks before things started happening. First, I noticed Jasmine seemed stressed at school. She kept checking her phone during class, biting her nails down to the quick. Her perfect hair wasn't so perfect anymore. Then one morning, federal agents showed up at their house. I know because everyone was talking about it. Black SUVs, guys in suits, the whole deal. They took boxes and computers out of the house for hours. The local news even covered it, though they didn't name names. Jasmine didn't come to school for a week after that. When she finally showed up, she looked different. No designer bag, no fresh manicure. Her eyes had dark circles underneath them. She found me after third period, grabbed my arm in the hallway. Her grip was desperate, nothing like the confident girl who'd humiliated me at prom. Her eyes were red and puffy. She begged me to meet her after school, said it was important. I agreed, mostly out of curiosity. We met at the park near school. She was already there when I arrived, sitting on a bench looking small and defeated. She started crying the second she saw me, told me her dad was under investigation. Their accounts were frozen. Her mom was having panic attacks. She said she was sorry for everything, for prom, for my scholarship, for my parents' jobs. She promised to fix it all if I could just make this stop. I told her I didn't know what she was talking about. She didn't believe me at first, kept insisting I must have done something, but I just shrugged and said karma works in mysterious ways. She broke down completely then, said she'd do anything, give me anything. She'd get my scholarship back, make sure my parents got better jobs, whatever I wanted. I pretended to think about it for a while, letting her squirm. Then I told her fine, but she had to do it all within 2 weeks, and she had to write apology letters to me and my my parents, explaining exactly what she'd done. She agreed immediately, desperate and grateful. True to her word, she made calls to family connections. My scholarship mysteriously got reinstated with a bigger amount than before. My parents both got calls about new job opportunities with better pay. She even threw in a brand new laptop for me, saying I'd need it for college. The apology letters were detailed and honest. I made copies of everything, keeping them safe in multiple locations. Jasmine thought we were square after that. She even tried to be friendly again, sitting with me at lunch, offering rides home. I played along, letting her think everything was forgiven, but I wasn't done. See, I'd held back some of the really bad stuff when I first sent that email to Tyler. The worst documents, the ones that showed actual fraud and money laundering. I'd been saving those for the right moment, and now that my family was taken care of, now that I had everything in writing, it was time for round 2. I waited until graduation was over, until I had my diploma safely in hand. Then I sent the rest. This time, the response was immediate. Within days, the investigation escalated into something much bigger. I heard through the grapevine that they'd found evidence of serious financial crimes. Not just tax stuff, but actual money laundering through fake charities. The kind of thing that sends people to prison for a long time. Federal agents had apparently been watching the family for months, and my documents gave them exactly what they needed to move forward. Jasmine showed up at my house one night, pounding on the door like her life depended on it. The sound echoed through our small apartment, desperate and frantic. My parents were working their new jobs. Mom had found work at a warehouse. Dad was doing night security, so I was alone. I opened the door to find her completely wrecked. Mascara running down her face in black rivers, hair a tangled mess, wearing gray sweatpants I'd never seen her in before. The designer princess who'd once mocked my clearance rack clothes looked like she'd been sleeping in her car. She pushed past me into our tiny living room, her eyes wild and unfocused. She was babbling about her dad being arrested that morning, said they took him away in handcuffs right in front of the neighbors. The FBI had shown up at dawn with a warrant, torn through their mansion like a tornado. Her mom had locked herself in her bedroom and wouldn't come out, not even when the agents demanded to search the room. Their lawyer, some expensive guy in a $1,000 suit, said things looked really bad. Multiple counts of fraud, embezzlement, racketeering. She kept asking me why I did this to her, why I ruined her life. Her voice cracked on every word, raw from crying. I just sat there on our worn couch, letting her rant, watching this girl who'd had everything fall apart in my living room. When she finally ran out of steam, collapsing into my dad's old recliner, I told her the truth, that I'd sent everything I had, every document, every email, every piece of evidence I'd collected, that there was nothing left to stop or take back, that maybe her family should have thought about consequences before they destroyed other people's lives for fun. She looked at me like I'd slapped her, her mouth opening and closing without sound. Then she started begging again, said she'd give me anything, everything, her car, a white Mercedes her dad bought for her 18th birthday, her jewelry, diamonds and gold worth more than my parents made in a year, money from accounts she still had access to, thousands just sitting there. I told her I didn't want her stuff. I wanted her to understand what it felt like to lose everything, to watch your world crumble while people who didn't care moved on with their lives. She left eventually, stumbling out into the night like a zombie. Her designer heels clicked unevenly on our cracked sidewalk. I watched from the window as she fumbled with her keys, dropped them twice before managing to unlock her car. I thought that would be the end of it, but Jasmine wasn't ready to give up. She started showing up everywhere I went. The grocery store where I'd see her lurking by the produce section. The library where she'd sit 3 tables away, pretending to read but watching me over the top of her book. Even outside the diner where I still worked some shifts, standing across the street like some kind of ghost. Not threatening or anything, just there, watching me with those hollow eyes that had lost all their cruel sparkle. It was creepy as hell. My coworkers started noticing, asked if I had a stalker, if I needed them to call the cops. I said no, she was harmless. Just a girl who'd lost her way. They didn't know our history, didn't know she was the reason I'd almost missed graduation, the reason my family had nearly ended up on the street. To them, she was just another rich kid having a breakdown. Then one day she approached me at the diner during my break. It was a slow Tuesday afternoon, the kind where we only got truckers and old people who tipped in change. She looked even worse than before. Lost weight she didn't have to lose. Her cheekbones sharp enough to cut, hair greasy and pulled back in a messy ponytail, designer clothes replaced with a wrinkled t-shirt and jeans that hung off her frame. She slid into the booth across from me without asking, the vinyl squeaking under her weight. She told me her dad's trial was starting soon. Federal court, lots of media attention, that her mom had filed for divorce and moved back with her parents in Connecticut, taking whatever money she could grab, that she was living alone in their big house with no money for utilities. The electricity had been shut off last week. She'd been showering at the gym until they revoked her membership for non-payment. The bank was foreclosing next month. Notices plastered all over the front door for everyone to see. I sipped my coffee, black, because we couldn't afford cream at home and I'd gotten used to it, and waited for her to get to the point. She pulled out a manila folder and pushed it across the table, past the sticky spot where someone had spilled syrup that morning. Inside were bank statements showing she'd somehow scraped together about $10,000 in cash. She said it was mine if I testified that I'd made everything up, that I'd forged the documents or something, that I was just a jealous girl trying to ruin a good family. I laughed in her face, the sound harsh and bitter, pushed the folder back hard enough that some bills spilled out and told her to leave before I called my manager. She didn't leave though. Instead, she started crying again, but this time it was different, quieter, more defeated. Real tears, not the manipulative waterworks I'd expected. She told me her dad had been doing this stuff since she was little, that she grew up thinking it was normal, just how business worked, that he'd taught her poor people were jealous and lazy, that they deserved to be stepped on because they didn't work hard enough to be rich. She said she knew it was wrong now, but didn't know how to be different, didn't know how to exist without the money and power that had defined her entire life. I felt bad for about 2 seconds. Then I remembered my parents crying at the kitchen table about losing their jobs. Remembered staying up all night wondering how we'd pay rent, if we'd have to move to a shelter. Remembered her laughing at me in that ballroom, champagne flute in hand, surrounded by her rich friends who thought my humiliation was entertainment. I told her to figure it out on her own, like the rest of us had to, and went back to work. The trial was all over local news. Every channel covered it, reporters camping outside the courthouse. I didn't have to testify since they had enough evidence without me. Apparently, I wasn't the only one who'd been collecting proof. Other employees had come forward, years of abuse and fraud finally coming to light. Jasmine's dad got 15 years in federal prison. The judge, an older woman with steel gray hair, called him a parasite on society during sentencing, said he represented everything wrong with corporate America America. They showed Jasmine in the courtroom, looking like a ghost in a borrowed suit. Her mom never showed up, already erasing that part of her life. A few days later, I got a call from an unknown number. It was late, past midnight. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. It was Jasmine. She was sobbing so hard I could barely understand her, words coming out in gasps and hiccups. Said she had nowhere to go. The house was gone, locks changed by the bank. Her mom wouldn't return her calls, had blocked her number. Her friends, those shiny, perfect people who'd laughed at my pain, had all disappeared like smoke. She was sleeping in her car in a Walmart parking lot, living off vending machine food. She begged me to let her stay with us, just for a few nights, just until she could figure something out. I hung up on her, but I couldn't stop thinking about it. Lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, remembering that broken voice. Yeah, she'd been horrible to me, had tried to destroy my future for sport, but she was 18 and homeless because of what I'd done. My mom always taught me that holding on to anger was like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. That forgiveness wasn't about them, it was about freeing yourself. So I called her back at 3 a.m, told her she could crash on our couch for 1 week. 1 week to figure out her next move. No more, no less. She showed up 20 minutes later with a single suitcase and red eyes swollen from crying. My parents weren't thrilled when they woke up to find Jasmine Montgomery sleeping on our secondhand couch, but they're good people, better than I am. They let her stay without much argument. That first night, I heard her crying through the thin walls that did nothing to muffle sound. Not dramatic sobs, just quiet, broken sounds like a wounded animal. I put a pillow over my head and tried to sleep, tried not to think about how far she'd fallen. The next few days were awkward as hell. Jasmine tried to help around the house, but she didn't know how to do anything. Didn't know how to wash dishes properly. She'd never had to. There was always staff for that. Couldn't operate our old washing machine that needed a special touch to start. Burned toast twice because she'd never used a toaster that didn't have digital settings. My mom ended up teaching her basic stuff like she was a little kid. How to separate laundry, how to clean a bathroom, how to cook pasta without burning the pot. It was painful to watch this girl who'd worn designer everything learning to fold fitted sheets. On the 4th night, I found her on our tiny balcony that overlooked the parking lot, staring at nothing. The metal chair creaked when I sat down next to her with 2 mugs of cheap hot chocolate made from a packet. We didn't talk for a while, just sat there listening to the sounds of the city, sirens in the distance, someone's music playing too loud, a couple arguing in the apartment below. Then she started telling me things about growing up in that house, that perfect mansion that looked like something from a magazine, about her dad screaming at servants for the smallest mistakes, throwing crystal glasses when he was angry, about her mom popping pills to cope, floating through life in a medicated haze, about being taught that showing kindness to lesser people was weakness that others would exploit. She told me about the first time she tried to befriend a scholarship kid in middle school, a quiet girl named Maria who was brilliant at math. Her dad found out when he saw them studying together and made her watch while he called the kids' parents, threatening their jobs at his company if the friendship continued. Maria never spoke to her again, wouldn't even look at her in the halls. She learned to be cruel to survive in that house, to protect herself from his rage. I didn't say anything, just let her talk, let years of poison spill out into the night air. Then she rolled up her sleeves. There were old scars I'd never noticed before, hidden under all those expensive long-sleeved blouses, thin lines across her forearms, some white with age, others still pink. She said those were from the times she'd tried to rebel, times she'd been caught being too soft, showing empathy to the wrong people. Her dad had a special belt he used for those occasions, Italian leather with a heavy buckle. Her mom would just watch from the doorway and tell her to stop crying, that tears were for poor people who couldn't control their emotions. I felt sick, my hot chocolate turning sour in my stomach. Asked her why she never told anyone. She laughed, but it wasn't funny, just a broken sound. Said who would believe her? Her family was perfect on the outside. Her dad donated to charities, the same ones he was stealing from, it turned out. Her mom organized fundraisers and smiled for society photographers. They had a reputation to maintain, an image to project. She was just a prop in their perfect life, dressed up and displayed like an expensive doll. She talked about prom night, said her dad had been watching from the parking lot the whole time, that he'd texted her during dinner, reminding her to put me in my place, to show everyone what happened to people who didn't know their station, that every cruel word she'd said was scripted by him, practiced in the car on the way there, that when she got home that night, he'd praised her for the performance, given her a new credit card as a reward, told her she'd done the family proud. She threw up after, disgusted with herself, but he just said that was weakness leaving her body. I asked why she went along with ruining my life after, why she'd helped spread those rumors, made sure I was blacklisted from every opportunity. She said he threatened to cut her off completely if she didn't. No college, no trust fund, no future. She'd be on the streets with nothing, and he'd make sure no one would help her. She chose survival over morality, self-preservation over doing what was right. Said she hated herself for it every day, that my face haunted her dreams. I didn't know what to say to that. Part of me wanted to forgive her, to recognize the scared girl under all that cruelty. Part of me was still angry, might always be angry. I told her she could stay another week while she figured things out. She got a job at a fast food place down the street, came home smelling like grease and looking exhausted, feet swollen from standing all day. But she never complained, never mentioned how far she'd fallen from her silver spoon life. Started paying my parents a little rent from her tiny paycheck. Insisted on contributing even though they said she didn't have to. Learned to cook basic meals from YouTube videos. It was weird seeing Jasmine, who used to carry $1,000 purses like they were nothing, excited about finding chicken on sale or clipping coupons from the Sunday paper. One night, about 3 weeks in, she broke down completely. We were watching TV, some mindless sitcom, when a news report came on about her dad's conviction. They showed footage of him being led away in chains, orange jumpsuit replacing his expensive suits. She started hyperventilating, then sobbing so hard she couldn't breathe. Told me something she'd never told anyone, words coming out between gasps. Her dad had done things to her, bad things. Started when she was 12 and her body began changing. Her mom knew but pretended not to. Said it was the price of their lifestyle, that all great men had their vices. Said she should be grateful for everything he provided. I held her while she shook, felt rage building in my chest like fire. Not at her anymore, but at the monster who'd raised her, who'd broken her before she even had a chance to become herself. I told her she never had to see him again, that she was safe now, that no one would hurt her in our home. She cried harder, but it seemed like relief this time, like a dam finally breaking after years of holding back the flood. We became actual friends after that. Weird, considering how we started, but trauma has a way of bonding people. She helped me pack for college, more excited about my future than I was. Folded my clothes with the precision information she'd learned from my mom, helped me pick out dorm supplies from the clearance section. I helped her apply for community college, for financial aid she'd never needed before, taught her about budgeting, about buying generic brands, about all the things she'd never needed to know when money was infinite. She told me she'd written to her dad in prison, not to reconcile but to tell him exactly what she thought of him. 10 pages of rage and pain, years of abuse finally given voice. That she was glad he was locked up, that she hoped he rotted there, alone and forgotten. She never sent it, but writing it helped, like lancing a wound that had been festering for years. She also wrote to her mom, but that letter came back unopened, returned to sender, in her mother's perfect handwriting. One day she came home from work with news. Her dad had been attacked in prison. Someone found out what he'd done to her, the other things they discovered during investigation. He was in the hospital, might never walk again, spine damaged, the doctor said. She didn't cry, just nodded and went to make dinner, movements mechanical. Later I found her staring at an old photo of them together at some charity gala, both smiling for the cameras. She tore it up slowly, methodically, and threw it away. Then she made tea and did her homework for her GED classes. My parents grew to care about her, my mom especially, who'd always wanted another daughter. Started teaching her things Jasmine's mom should have taught her. How to braid hair properly, not the expensive salon styles, but simple things she could do herself. How to handle cramps without prescription painkillers, just hot water bottles and ibuprofen. How to be strong without being cruel. How to stand up for yourself without stepping on others. My dad helped her fix her car when it broke down, the Mercedes long sold to pay for lawyers. Showed her basic maintenance on the hit-up Honda she'd bought for $500 cash. They became the family she'd never really had, the first adults who cared about her without wanting something in return. When it was time for me to leave for college, Jasmine helped me move. We loaded my stuff into her hit-up car, the trunk held closed with bungee cords. She drove me to campus, 4 hours each way, singing along to the radio and stopping at gas stations for snacks we would have sneered at before. She helped me set up my dorm room, hung my posters, and made my bed with hospital corners like my mom taught her. Before she left, she hugged me tight, her thin arms stronger than they looked, thanked me for destroying her old life, said it was the best thing anyone had ever done for her, even if it hadn't felt like it at the time. I cried a little then, understanding finally that sometimes destruction is necessary for rebirth. She texted me a few weeks later. Her mom had called herself, overdosed on the same pills she'd been taking for years, the ones that made the world soft and bearable. Jasmine was listed as next of kin, had to handle the arrangements even though they hadn't spoken in months. I offered to come back, to skip classes and be there for her, but she said no, said she needed to do this alone, to say goodbye on her own terms. She cremated her mom and scattered the ashes at sea. No ceremony or prayers, no funeral, no mourners, no flowers, just her saying goodbye to another ghost, another piece of a life that had never really been hers. She inherited what was left after the lawyers took their cut. Not much compared to what they'd had, but enough to get a small apartment, a studio in a decent neighborhood, with working appliances and no rats. She stayed in school, working full-time while taking classes at night. Sent me pictures of her first A on a test. Proud as hell, the paper covered in star stickers from her teacher. Started volunteering at a shelter on weekends, serving food to people her father would have stepped over on the street, trying to give back, trying to balance the scales, trying to be better than what she was raised to be. We stayed close through my freshman year. She'd visit sometimes, taking the bus because gas was too expensive, crashing in my dorm room on an air mattress, sharing dining hall meals on my guest passes. My roommate thought it was weird that I was friends with the girl who'd tried to destroy me, but she didn't know the whole story. Didn't know about the bruises hidden under designer clothes, the screams muffled by thick mansion walls. Didn't know about the 12-year-old girl who learned to be cruel to survive, who thought love always came with a price tag. Jasmine started therapy with someone who specialized in trauma, found a sliding scale clinic that worked with her budget, came back from sessions exhausted but lighter somehow, like she'd been carrying rocks and finally learned to set some down. Started understanding that she was a victim too, even if she'd also been a perpetrator. That both things could be true at once, existing in the same space without canceling each other out. That healing meant acknowledging both parts, the hurt and the hurting. She had a lot of work to do, years of damage to untangle, but she was doing it. Then one day she called me with news. Her dad had died in prison. Another inmate finished what the first one started, shanked him in the shower when the guards weren't looking. She didn't cry, didn't celebrate either, just felt empty, she said, like a chapter closing, a book she could finally put down. She decided not to claim his body, let the state bury him in an unmarked grave with the other unclaimed dead. He didn't deserve more than that, didn't deserve her money or her grief. She used some of her inheritance to pay back people her dad had hurt, not because she had to legally, the lawyers made that clear, but because she wanted to. Tracked down former employees he'd cheated, families he'd destroyed with his schemes, gave them what she could, apologies and checks that could never fully repair the damage. It wasn't enough to fix everything, but it was something, a start, a way to transform blood money into something cleaner, even if it could never be completely clean. She graduated from community college with honors last spring. I drove down for the ceremony in the same hit-up Honda she'd bought years ago. She'd given it to me when I needed a car for an internship, wouldn't take no for an answer, said it was the least she could do after everything. I watched her walk across that stage in a borrowed cap and gown, head held high. No family in the audience except me and my parents, who'd driven 6 hours to be there. She cried when they handed her the diploma, real tears of accomplishment, not the fake ones she used to produce on command for her father's schemes. After graduation, she got accepted to a 4-year school with a full ride based on her grades and essay about overcoming adversity. She wrote about growing up in a toxic household, about learning empathy the hard way, about discovering who she really was underneath all the programming. The admissions committee was impressed by her honesty, by her volunteer work, by the recommendations from professors who'd watched her transform. She's studying social work now, wants to help kids from messed up families, says she understands what it's like to be trapped in a situation that's slowly culling you from the inside. We were having coffee last month when she told me something that floored me. She'd been contacted by a lawyer about her dad's estate. Turns out he'd hidden money in offshore accounts, millions the feds hadn't found. The lawyer, some sketchy guy who'd worked with her dad for years, offered to help her access it. All she had to do was sign some papers, move the money through shell companies, the same tricks her dad had taught her to admire. She could be rich again, have everything back. The designer clothes, the fancy car, the life she'd been raised to believe she deserved. She turned him down flat, reported him to the FBI instead, gave them all his contact information and recorded conversations. They arrested him a week later, found evidence of a whole network of financial crimes connected connected to her father's business. She testified against him, calm and clear on the witness stand, helped put away 3 more of her dad's associates who'd been preying on people for decades. The prosecutor said she was the best witness they'd had, credible and unflinching in her testimony. She lives simply now, has a small apartment near campus, furnished with thrift store finds and hand-me-downs from friends, works part-time at a crisis hotline, talking people through their darkest moments. She's good at it, they tell her, knows how to listen without judgment, how to hold space for pain without trying to fix it. Her supervisor says she has a gift for connecting with callers who've been abused, for making them feel heard and believed. She comes home exhausted but fulfilled, knowing she's making a difference in small ways. Sometimes she still has nightmares, wakes up thinking she's back in that house, that her dad is standing in her doorway, has panic attacks when she smells certain colognes or hears voices that sound like his, but she's learning to manage them, to ground herself in the present. Has a therapist who specializes in childhood trauma, a support group for survivors. She's not okay yet, might never be completely okay, but she's healing, building a life based on her own values, not the poison she was fed as a child. We joke sometimes about how we met, how I basically destroyed her life and it was the best thing that ever happened to her. It's dark humor, the kind that makes other people uncomfortable, but it works for us. We understand each other in a way most people don't. Know what it's like to have your world turned upside down, to lose everything and discover who you really are in the wreckage. She says I saved her life by ruining it. I tell her she saved herself by choosing to be better. My parents still check on her regularly. My mom calls her every Sunday, makes sure she's eating enough, sleeping okay, sends care packages during finals week with homemade cookies and instant coffee. My dad helped her fix her new apartment when she moved in, patched holes in the walls and installed better locks. They've officially adopted her in every way that matters, given her the family she never had. She spent last Christmas with us, helped cook dinner and played board games until midnight. It was the first real Christmas she'd ever had, she said. The first one about being together instead of performing for guests. She's dating someone now, a guy from her statistics class named Marcus who works at a nonprofit. He's nothing like the rich boys she used to date for show, the ones her father approved of. Marcus is kind and patient, understands her history without pitying her, takes things slow, respects her boundaries, doesn't push when she needs space. They study together at the library, share cheap meals at campus dining halls. He makes her laugh, real laughter that comes from her belly instead of the practiced giggle she used to do. She's learning what healthy love looks like, that it doesn't come with conditions or threats. Last week she called me crying, happy tears this time. She'd gotten into her dream graduate program, full funding to study clinical social work, wants to specialize in helping teenagers from abusive homes, to be the adult she needed when she was young. The program director was impressed by her personal statement, by her understanding of trauma from both sides, said she'd make an excellent therapist because she'd been through the fire and come out stronger. She starts in the fall, moving to a new city for the first time in her life. We're planning a road trip this summer before she moves, just the 2 of us, driving across the country in that old Honda that somehow still runs, staying in cheap motels, eating at truck stops, seeing all the places she never got to visit because her family only traveled to resorts and private islands. She wants to see the Grand Canyon, Yellowstone, all the tourist traps her father would have sneered at, wants to be a regular person doing regular things, building memories that belong to her alone. She asked me recently if I ever regret what I did, if I feel guilty about destroying her family, about sending her father to prison where he died. I told her the truth, that I'd do it again in a heartbeat, that some people deserve what they get, and her father was one of them, that watching her rebuild herself from nothing has been one of the most amazing things I've ever seen, that she's stronger than she knows, braver than she believes, that I'm proud to call her my friend, my sister in everything but blood. She's thinking about changing her name legally, wants to shed the last piece of her old identity, to choose something that reflects who she is now. We spent hours looking through baby name websites, laughing at the weird ones, making lists of possibilities. She likes the name Hope, says it fits where she is in life. New beginnings, fresh starts, all that symbolic stuff. I told her it's cheesy as hell but perfect for her. She's filing the paperwork next month, officially becoming someone new. The truth is, we saved each other. I pulled her out of a toxic life that was slowly culling her soul. She taught me about forgiveness, about seeing the humanity in people who've hurt you, about how someone can be both victim and villain, how those lines blur when you look close enough, how sometimes the best revenge isn't watching someone suffer, but helping them heal, even when they don't deserve it, especially when they don't deserve it. She graduates next year, already has job offers from several organizations, places that help at-risk youth and domestic violence survivors. She'll be good at it, I know. Has the kind of understanding that only comes from lived experience, the ability to connect with people who've been written off by everyone else. She wants to start a scholarship fund eventually, help kids like I was get through school, turn her father's blood money into something good, something that lifts people up instead of crushing them. We don't talk about prom night anymore. It feels like something that happened to different people in a different life, which I guess it did. Neither of us is the same person we were that night. She's not the cruel princess in designer heels, and I'm not the poor girl desperate to fit in. We're just us now. 2 women who've been through hell and came out the other side holding hands, who learned that sometimes the worst thing that happens to you becomes the best thing, if you let it, if you're brave enough to rebuild from the ashes. She sent me a text yesterday, just 3 words. Thank you, always. I knew what she meant. Thank you for seeing through her mask. Thank you for refusing to let her buy her way out. Thank you for being tough enough to break her so she could put herself back together right. Thank you for becoming family when hers failed her. Thank you for everything, even the parts that hurt, especially the parts that hurt. I texted back, always, sisters, because that's what we are now. Not the family you're born into, but the one you choose, the one you build from scratch when everything else falls apart, the one that sees your worst self and loves you anyway, helps you become better. We're proof that sometimes the best relationships are forged in fire, built on foundations of truth even when that truth is ugly. That redemption is possible if you're willing to do the work, that even the worst people can change if someone believes in them enough to hold them accountable. She's coming to visit next month. We're going to binge bad movies and eat too much takeout, paint each other's nails, and talk about everything and nothing. Just 2 regular women in their 20s, living regular lives. Nobody would guess our history if they saw us together. Wouldn't believe that we started as enemies, that I once destroyed everything she knew, that she once tried to ruin my future for sport. Now we're just us. Best friends, sisters, family. Proof that sometimes the best endings come from the worst beginnings, that sometimes you have to burn it all down to build something better, that sometimes, just sometimes, everybody wins in the end.